So, if you guys have been living under a rock recently, then you probably don't really know that Marvel for a long while now has been on a 2-year gradual decline, maybe even prolonging this. And while I can just make a video that a lot of people typically make, and I'm not trying to be that black sheep in the herd, I thought I could take this chance to try and analyze what the main tumor seems to be in Western media today. Now, what can you necessarily blame about the decline in quality we usually see in modern films, around the 2020 to 2023 period? More specifically, what do we see in Marvel films, as this is the main anagram for this video. Now, as you know, I don't really script any of these. I kind of just record and chop the audio up to make it sound a bit more coherent. So this is basically me giving my opinion, without a piece of paper, without me looking at a computer. I'm just spitballing my opinions on why I personally believe that these movies kind of suck. Now, while I'd usually just resort to saying that I believe it could be a byproduct of pandering to certain groups, I'm not going to go there. I personally believe that the reason Western culture is so god-awful these days is because I believe there's a lack of pride in their own culture. Take anime, for example. I've never really been a big fan of anime. I've always kind of thought the art style to be a bit bland, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of anime fans in the comments saying how wrong I am to believe this. I personally believe, to give anime some credit, that the core success for anime is one of two things. I'm going to name one. I believe that Japan typically have more pride within their own culture, within their own art styles, within their own media of actors and how to direct. I believe anime is a representation of this culture, and they don't do it in a way that seems demeaning to it, or they don't try to pander to different cultures. They stay within their own culture because they want to represent it in a way that's positive and informative to people that aren't really aware that much of these cross-country ideals and ways to do things. I believe people have a draw to new ideas, new experimentations of the medium of acting, of filmmaking, and directing. Western culture seems almost ashamed of its own history, almost pandering to any culture other than its own, which is usually why you tend to see a lot of American movies about Africa or Asia, or trying to encapsulate cultures that is not their own. Now, I don't believe American media is necessarily wrong for trying to depict different cultures within their own movies. I believe that's fine. Whether you love or hate Hollywood, you have to admit that it's a medium in which, if you present your movies through Hollywood, whether they be good or bad, they're probably going to garnish a bit more popularity as opposed to, let's say, an obscure indie film. This doesn't mean the quality is always better, but it surely does mean that you're at least guaranteed somewhat more revenue and more viewership than what you would have done if it was simply just a self-made indie project. Now, why is Captain Marvel in the thumbnail? That's a simple question to a simple answer. Captain Marvel, to me, represents everything wrong with the creative minds behind characters these days, which is the main surrogate, the main vessel in which we open up these worlds, these fictional creations by these very creative people. But the problem is, a lot of movies these days, they're not being made by creative people. They're being made with people who want to push an agenda. Now, with my beliefs, a lot of people can find me a bit disagreeable. I don't believe I'm very disagreeable. I've always tried to be as open-minded to different perspectives as I can be, even though I may not always believe in different perspectives or ways of writing a movie. I don't like to call everything woke, even though that's the only real word I can think of when describing a lot of this stuff. It kind of encapsulates all of it in one coherent unison. Why we genuinely don't care about Marvel characters these days is because we don't really have a lot of reasons to care. Endgame kind of finished the saga of Marvel, and that's not to say you can't continue afterwards, but because there's so many characters with such unlikable personality traits that inherit no emotions or exhibit no real feelings of empathy towards anyone other than themselves, we typically don't like them. And unfortunately, a lot of these characters tend to be women. And the unfortunate thing is, I've seen so many great female characters written by great writers. I don't believe it's a gender thing as to why these characters are poorly written, because I've seen women write females horribly, I've seen men write females horribly. It's not a lack of understanding of women, it's a lack of understanding about characters, how to make characters genuinely enjoyable to watch, to make characters the spearhead into movies to come. A person you want to follow into the darkness so they can lead you to the light. If a protagonist can't lead a movie, then we're not going to bother watching any more installments or any other movies that include this character. And I believe Captain Marvel is simply a good example of this. Now, I would have had She-Hulk be the main thumbnail poster girl for this video, but personally, I believe She-Hulk is so bad that there's not really a lot that you can do that would redeem her. You could remedy some of the problems that were very visible in the show, but I don't believe it would fully fix the problems with the character, the fundamentals. You'd have to completely change the character to what she was in the show to make her work at all. I'm not going to go into a full synopsis of Captain Marvel's story or the plot of her movie. I believe if you haven't seen it by now, then probably good for you, but also, there's a lot of videos that can explain it better than I do. Captain Marvel is just genuinely an unlikable character because of how overpowered she is, because she doesn't really seem to demonstrate any real struggle. In her story, it kind of feels like she has everything almost handed to her. Her powers are immediately powerful, and she immediately knows how to wield them. There's never really any point in the movie where you feel like you're watching a growth. It more feels like you're watching a pre-established character kick ass. We typically don't care about these characters because there's no real reason to care. There's no journey, there's no start, beginning, or end. Unfortunately, this kind of builds very bad characters, and it also doesn't really send a good message for a lot of the people watching. People that believe that if you have power, if you have these gifts, you're just perfect in every single way. There's no flaws about you. There's nothing that comes with having such a burden of power. And there are many movies I can list off that demonstrate the same perspective, but, I think I'd be here all day. Just to name a few, though: Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, the recent Terminator films, The Woman King. Trust me, that's a movie I'm going to be talking about soon. Anything with Rey Skywalker in it. Fucking Velma. Oh, God. Oh, sorry, I always laugh whenever I talk about Velma. These are main movies, big movies with big budgets, with characters in them that take a role that simply just isn't meant for them. I don't believe inclusion is a bad thing, but I also believe inclusion is something that should be handled with delicacy. You should strive to make good characters. You should strive to make new characters, not characters coming from a pre-existing universe, taking the mantle of an already established character. Those were most of the examples I just named. Rey Skywalker, that horologist girl from Pirates of the Caribbean 5, I think it was. That short-haired chick from the most recent Terminator. See, they're so unimportant to me that I can't even remember their names. I remember Rey, but that's because it's a very short name. It's very easy to remember, and because I've heard it so many times, because of how many people hate her, that's just... I shouldn't know her for that. And the unfortunate thing is, Hollywood doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. Quentin Tarantino isn't making a movie every single year. Martin Scorsese's retired. Steven Spielberg isn't around anymore. There's no Stanley Kubricks. There's no people with actual drive and passion for this industry. And the ones that do exist, the people that genuinely have a passion for this industry, they're swept under the rug into the indie circuit. And I'm not giving any bad omen to the indie, but I just believe that if you make indie films, as good as they may be, on average they just don't make as much money, and they don't garnish enough attention, not as nearly enough attention, and as much attention as Marvel garnishes. And in a world where anyone can be anything, anyone can be whatever they want, a character doesn't have to be likable, a character doesn't need to have motivation, as long as they have strong powers, as long as they're a feminist, or whatever the fuck. That's all it takes. And that's what I don't like. Is that I have such a drive for this industry. I'm an aspiring director, and I'm hoping to get to a point where I can at least be proud of the stuff I produce. But the thing is, I could produce a pile of shit in the toilet, and it would have more dexterity than most of the stuff Marvel makes these days. But I've done ranting for now. If you guys enjoy these little ranting videos, please leave a like, subscribe, or not, I don't mind. Comment what you think. We can have a little debate in the comment section. I'll see you around. The Von Hauser is gone.
Yeah. This is for anybody who needs to tell somebody to fuck off. Well, hi, go fuck yourself. Suck a bag of dicks.